Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we are gonna do some line editing. I think this is gonna be more of a chill line editing video, mostly because I haven't pre-read what we're gonna look at today. I made a video where I went through Act 1 of the first book that I ever wrote, which is a YA fantasy. I have made quite a few videos about this book at this point. People seem to enjoy them, so I thought we could take a look at Act 2 of this book, which is not really an act that I have shown much of in my videos. I usually focus a lot on Act 1. Maybe we'll just do like one chapter or however long until we get bored. Here we are. This is chapter 14, and this is the first chapter of Act 2. I'm gonna try not to cringe. The way that I approach editing my old writing is very different than how I approach like beta reading for other people. Okay, so what is happening at the top of Act 2 is that there is an artifact that has gone missing, and Kyra is the prime suspect or something. She's in a cell underneath the palace. Taeyeon is the prince. They are childhood friends who are no longer friends. I won't get into all the backstory. All you have to know is that Kyra is a very powerful mage who is currently being imprisoned right now. Taeyeon is a prince of an empire that she does not like, and they have personal beef. Aston is Taeyeon's personal guard. Mito is Taeyeon's right-hand man. Taeyeon goes down into the cell that she's being held in order to speak to her. Okay, let's look at it. Taeyeon returned before dawn. Okay, wait, what's he returning from? What is he returning from? Taeyeon returned before dawn? Hang on, y'all. I'm like going back into chapter 13. Okay, first thing, I would cut this. Where's this string? I think this is perfectly fine to start like this. Beneath the palace, the holding cells reeked of mold and damp earth. The guards and a smattering of mages blocked the entrance of a long, dark corridor. As Taeyeon passed through, he brushed a string of cobwebs aside, and they stiffened at the sight of him. We know that the holding cells are beneath the palace. I think that's something that would have been established in the previous chapter. I'm going to take this out. I think we would just say the holding cells reeked of mold and damp earth. The guards, in order to visualize better, we want to know how many guards. Honestly, you can just say 12 guards and mages. 12 guards and mages block the entrance of the long dark corridor. Okay, so much vagary. Okay, to be clear, I don't like iron gates either, but I'm too lazy to like visualize this right now. So the point of this edit is like, what does the entrance look like? As Taeyeon passed through, he brushed a string of cobwebs aside. He brushed aside a thick curtain of cobwebs. If I was spending more time on this, I would try to come up with something that wasn't cobwebs, but it's fine. I think a thick curtain is like a little bit more evocative than saying a string. Like it's just like one cobweb. This is like such a weirdly constructed paragraph. Okay, I'll either cut it or I would like put it down here for later. So 12 guards and mages blocked the iron gates of the corridor. They stiffened at the sight of him. Okay. I will speak with her now, he said. Haka stepped forward. He was a veteran of the royal guard and quicker with his honesty. It's advised that the mages conduct the interrogation, sir. Hesitance. I would just simplify this. I'd say a veteran of the royal guard. He was quicker with his honesty. It's advised that the mages conduct the interrogation, sir. Hesitance. Weakened or not, she is quite powerful still. Sorry. Oh, I think Kyra in a previous chapter did something to this guard. I would still cut this because the reader has that knowledge already. The reader saw her do something to him. I'm aware, and so is the king, said Taeyeon. I'm here on his orders. If she's going to speak to anyone, it will be me. I'm aware, and so is the king. I'm here on his orders. He said this with a confidence he didn't feel, but no one had to know that. First of all, this is not true. I don't think that this is something that should be said aloud, because I don't think that Taeyeon necessarily believes this. I think that I prefer to keep this in the subtext. It's just like it's a little too much. A little too much. A lantern light flickered around the bend of the crumbling steps. You have to specify in the entrance. Taeyeon stopped in the corner of his eye, Mito peeking in unsubtly. Allow me to go with you, Your Highness, said Aston. Taeyeon shook his head. Kyra had always spoken more plainly with less company. And after 3 years in a prison camp, he imagined she would be even quicker to bristle around any guards. Even more so, Okay, Kyra had always been spoken more plainly with less company. I was gonna edit this sentence, but it's fine. It's fine. Let's just keep going. It's all right, Aston. He tipped his head to the side. With a lowered voice, he said, Sito Mito instead, would you? The only indication of Aston's discontent was a slight twitch of his lips, and then it was gone. He nodded and walked off in Mito's direction. Right. So if you've been following the Mito-Aston saga, Aston often has to, like, babysit Mito, and he doesn't like that. But yeah, okay. I don't like slight twitch, because think of something twitching, it is inherently slight. So I would cut this. The only indication of Aston's discontent was a twitch of his lips. Again, there's like no figurative language in this book. Maybe I need a simile or something. All right. Okay, I don't think he needs to say all right. All right. Taeyeon turn. Taeyeon turn to who? Oh my god. The cobwebs aren't doing anything for me personally. I'm gonna take them out. Oh my god, so many just like unnecessary words. I'm gonna take this out. Haka steps aside. Further down, you can just say down. Down the corridor, a group of mages stood before a group of, oh my god, again. I'll say four. 4 mages stood. Okay, I think there should be, what is this stage direction? So I think they need to, okay, down the dim corridor. Here is where I would add more setting description. Then here I would just say, before the rusted iron bars of Kyra's cell, 4 mages clutched their conduits tightly in their hands, and Taeyeon motioned for them to let him in. They bowed. One of them pulled the lock free, and Taeyeon stepped through. Leave us, he said, and waited for the sounds of their footsteps. Obliged warily, he waited for them to retreat, shutting the cell door behind him. The first time Kyra was here, she'd paced visible circles into the dirt. Her wrists had been bound, and she'd thrashed and kicked at the bars with vigor. Oh right, she's been imprisoned here before. One thing about Kyra is this girl's always in prison. It had taken 6 mages to reinforce the irons. Still, Kyra had dented them. Tonight there was none of that. She was stone still, sat in the corner. My agent told me that this might not be American English. Can the Americans in the chat tell me if this is like not correct grammar? When I was writing revising Local Heavens, my agent was like, I had some lines where it would be like, they were sat on the chair. Yeah, stuff like that. I had to like change all of it because apparently the grammar was wrong, or it wasn't American English. I don't know. I'll leave it for now, but I don't know if that's actually correct grammar. Sat in the corner, her head propped up against the craggy bricks. An untouched tray of dry breads was beside her. I'm gonna say sat beside her on a tray. So, okay, I feel like a lot of this is just like specificity, extraneous language. And I think one thing that I notice about this book a lot is that I think the voice like dips in and out of like between like colloquial and formal. That I feel like that's one of the signs of sort of like a beginner writer, is when your voice isn't like consistently sustained across the book. Part of the reason why I always call the prose in this book boring is because I think just in my last 2 books, I think I tend to approach my prose with a lot more figurative language, a little bit more on the flowery side, I think. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with this sparser voice. But even though it is sparse, it doesn't mean it has to be dry. A tray of dry bread sat beside her on a tray, and her robes were frayed and dirtied. She didn't move, didn't look up as Taeyeon entered. I'll tell you right now, even I can't kill a man in my sleep. Oh, right. Okay, she was accused of killing someone. This girl can't catch a break. Right, that's why they're holding her. An artifact went missing, and also someone in the court was killed, and They're blaming her even though it wasn't her. She laughed or tried to. It died as it left her throat. Is this familiar phrasing? I feel like I don't like this. So, okay, I don't like this. Actually, I don't like this whole thing. I don't think that Kyra even like dryly would laugh here. I think she would just think that the entire court is like really stupid. And I think she would just be extremely done with everything. Like, I think she's more like empty on the inside than she is like amused. I'm just gonna go with like a plain dialogue tag, but an action or a description would work fine here too. I think it would make more sense to say, would I be here right now? Closer, he saw her dark hair matted, slick from sweat, clinging to her neck and the sides of her face. Dark hair was matted, slick. Okay, slick from sweat. Okay, this is so basic. He saw her dark hair was matted. I don't think matted is the word here. This needs like, I don't think any figurative language has been used in this chapter. I'm gonna say I sunk in like bruises. It's familiar. I would revise it, but like rhythmically, I feel like it needs something there. He saw her dark hair was tangled, plastered to her neck with seat. Dead. She was amused by it. Maybe she was. It wasn't unlike their temperance days. Maybe she was. It wasn't unlike their temperance days. Rumors and stories overshadowing the facts. Mystery protected her as it always had, made her more powerful than she was. That didn't mean to. Wait, this is actually pretty good. See what happens when we just put a little interiority in there. The mages and guards saw you with the high priest earlier in the day, he said carefully. And is that a crime? They said it. Okay, do I like this dialogue? I would just like change this to be a little bit more formal, but this is fine, I guess. That is a crime. He said it didn't look like a friendly, didn't appear to be a friendly conversation, and that you were near my father's study where the shield was being held. She said nothing. He shook his head. Didn't I warn you specifically not to try anything? I didn't make any promises. Which is true. She didn't. Those aren't worth anything between you and I, as you recall. Oh my gosh. She went for the jugular. He held her gaze. She spoke such things with a purposeful tepidness. She wanted to see him crack. He wouldn't. That's fine, I guess. What my father doesn't understand, he fears. When he fears, he's quick to anger. We don't need this dialogue tag. It's pretty clear who's talking. He drew closer to her, crouched so that they were eye level. Still, she didn't look at him. Okay, that's confusing because I thought he was holding her gaze. That doesn't even make sense. Okay. He had a better view of her now, at the fading scrapes along her cheeks, the thin scar on her jawbone. Those were new. He didn't realize how much of her face he'd had memorized until that moment. I don't think these are scrapes. I think these are scars. Fading scars along her cheeks. The thin... I want something more like punchy here. Not a silver wound on her jawbone. I would go like world building specificity here, like roped like the grooves of a Shinwayan guard stick. I just made this up right now. I think specificity is always good. These were new. These were new. He hadn't realized how much of her face he'd memorized until that moment. You have reservations about cooperating with me. I understand that. I would just take that out. You have reservations, yeah. See, this is fine. You have reservations about cooperating with me. He glanced at the cracked ground, dirt caked into the asphalt, but I'm telling you the alternative is worse. She lolled her head to the side blithely. Her gaunt hands caught the torchlight. Oh my god, we used blithely already. I'm gonna cut it out. She lolled her head to the side. Did we say sunken? We did. I'm gonna rework this to say the torchlight pulled into the the word cave is a little bit but I like this better rhythmically. So one thing that I do when I'm line editing for myself, sometimes I know what I want a sentence to sound like, but I don't have all the vocabulary. Prose is a very musical thing to me. Like it's a very sonic experience, if that makes sense. I can hear in my head what I want a sentence to sound like what I want the rhythm, the diction to be. Sometimes it takes me a while to like find the words. It's very bizarre. I feel like I'm a writer with terrible vocabulary. Like anytime I play like word games with my friends and stuff like that, I can never think fast enough to like come up with words because I feel like I don't actually, off the top of my head, I'm not able to recall words very quickly. Okay, actually, now that I'm looking at this sentence again, I don't really like the word lolled. Like that word doesn't even sound good. Do you know what I mean? Okay, actually, I feel like it makes more sense to say that she didn't react to this, you know? There was no threat to her anymore. Maybe he had known that already, but you could see it now clearer than ever. The world could unravel at the seams. I think that this is an important sentiment. I'm not sure I like this language. Unravel at the seams. I don't know. It feels like familiar phrasing. I think this is just like implied, like he's staring at her, right? Death was no threat to her anymore. I think, okay, so when it comes to familiar phrasing, I think the way to get around it is to twist the phrase. I don't know if this will sound good. Something to that effect. This part you'd have to come up with something. Anyways, he tensed, waiting. Then with tired resignation, she said, this is like an unnecessary action tag. I think it's like implied that he is tense in this paragraph, right? As he's like observing her. This is just like over explaining, I think. She said, just tell me what your new ultimatum is. At least her impatience hadn't changed. I know you didn't kill Petrus, he said, and of course you don't have the shield. Your room was thoroughly searched. Her words were dry, so you're at least a fraction more rational than your father. He rose. Okay, I would just use his name here. I totally forgot that Theon was crouched. When did he crouch? That was a while ago, wasn't it? Anyways. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Your divine magic allows you to sense the shield from afar. He paused here to see if she would react. So I don't like divine magic. Actually, I guess not all magic is divine. Kyra has a specific kind of magic ability, so I guess that's fine. He paused here to see if she would react. This is only an educated guess based on readings he had done of magic theory in the libraries. I don't like this phrase magic theory. That is extremely vague. I think one thing that is very evident about this book is that the magic is, because I never developed enough rules, I can only ever be vague when I'm like referencing the magic system at all. I think this is something like this would benefit from like more specificity. Like what kind of magic theory was he reading up on? So basically what's happening here is that Theon doesn't even know for sure that this is true. He has just like read about it, basically. He's like, I read an article. Your divine magic allows you to sense the shield from afar. So I don't remember, like, her thing is like tied to some kind of goddess power. So I think instead of saying magic theory, I think it would make a lot more sense for him to say specifically like the divinity that her culture is rooted in. Also, we don't need to say in the libraries. Where else do readings happen? She said silently he understood he was right. Okay, you can just say, he continued. If you join the Imperial Peace Tour, you can help us find it. I can help you find it. Her eyes flashed defiant. You make it sound like you're doing me a favor. Okay, so pacing wise, one thing that I would also say about this book is the political tour that they are doing of these courts. That's like basically the inciting incident of this entire book. The fact that it's only happening at the top of Act 2 is a little too slow. So if I was doing a dev edit, I would have them try to kick off the tour like midway through Act 1. The other thing that I would do with a dev edit is obviously I would make Kyra and Theon the only two main characters, because I think a lot of why the pacing of this book is so slow is because so much word count is wasted on Mito and Aston, who do not have enough going for them to be main characters. Anyways, so yeah, this is like kind of the chapter that kicks off the inciting incident, which is them going on the tour. If you join the Imperial Peace Tour, you can help us find it. I can help you find it. Okay, her eyes flashed defiant. I think defiance is implied. Make it sound like you're doing me a favor. This is very boring. Something about this feels like really colloquial. I'll just say that. You make it sound like a favor. Am I not? He countered easily. Again, I don't really like these little add-ons. I don't know. Maybe it's just not the way I write now. You want your hands on the shield too. She does. This is true. Her expression grew still. She thought he wouldn't know that she would take her first chance to steal the shield for herself. It felt for a second. The shield, by the way, I think I explained this in my last video, but it's basically magic is like a physical resource in this world, and it has to be like drawn upon in order to like use and channel. Empire, and specifically this city, draws a lot of their like magical resource, I think, from this shield. It's kind of like losing out on a natural resource that is important for like powering things and stuff like that. So that's why the Empire wants it back. Kyra wants it back because it's like an artifact of her culture that was stolen like a long time ago, and she wants to like reclaim it for her people. Kyra is, this is something I also explained in my last video, but Kyra is like supposed to be somewhat of a spiritual figurehead. So she does sort of feel some sort of duty to do that. Expression grew still. Her expression stilled. She thought he wouldn't know that she would take her first chance to steal the shield for herself. It felt for a second, we'll say a moment. It felt for a moment, like a small victory that he had managed to catch her off guard. After all, he didn't carry the same naivety he did 3 years ago. He had seen the inside of war cancels now. I almost want this word to connect somehow to this imagery of shadows. I don't think we need after all, actually. He didn't carry the same naivety 3 years ago. He had seen the inside of war cancels now. He had matured in the shadow of a fierce king. Yeah, actually, that's fine. This is so weird. There's so much excessive words. So one thing I was explaining in my last video is that Kyra and Tion, there is like a romantic undertone to their relationship. I don't call it a subplot because I don't actually write a plot around it. One thing I was explaining in my previous video was how the book isn't a colonizer romance because Tion's empire did not colonize Kyra's culture, but the empire is still a colonizing force. And they have pillaged other lands, and they have stolen from her culture. I would probably change some things around the lore to not make the power imbalance between the two characters so, like, I would try to even it a little bit, or I just would not write a romantic subplot at all. Okay, I'm just gonna like move. I'm gonna move along because this is getting long. So what happens throughout the rest of this? Right, so Kyra kind of gives us a soliloquy, and Tion is like, you're full of shit. Like, you don't actually care about doing your job as this spiritual figurehead. Like, you've never actually cared about that. So, like, why are you acting like you care now? Type thing. He knew that words were accurate as he said them, and at once Kyra was on her feet, her hand raised, drawing the torchlight. Right, so the magic system is elemental in this book. I don't remember the rules. I don't think there were that many rules. Again, I think we can just cut this. This is not forceful enough. So I kind of imagine her hand like shooting up into the air. So I think you should say that probably. Kyra's on her feet, her hand shot into the air, drawing the torchlight towards her. It's like a little bit more like action oriented. The ring of fire, okay, rimmed the ceiling and lit up the dark cell. I think that's how you would do that. Did not move. Sweat collected along his forehead. Cuffs of Kyra's robe singed with the flames. The surface of a frozen pond falling, just say breaking. Why does the prose sound so weird? Voice hardened and cracked like the surface of a frozen pond, breaking under too much weight. Okay, so here I would say, like, first of all, I don't like this figurative language. Like, the surface of a frozen pond is like too, I don't think I do anything interesting with this to not make it sound like familiar phrasing, but let's just skip over that and like worry about this part. I'm really exposing the way that I write my first drafts, but a lot of the time I will just say it comes down to rhythm. I can hear the rhythm of what I want the sentence to sound like in my head, but I can't find the words for it in the moment. I use square brackets a lot to basically be like, I'll just come back to this later when I have the brain capacity. She summoned a great breath, and for a second, Taeyeon thought she really would toss the flame towards him, but her shoulders only tensed, then shook out like a string on a loop, like thus.
Ooh, what the heck is this?
So one thing was when we were going through Act 1, most of the time I was like, none of this is that bad. It was okay. It was serviceable. Suddenly we're in Act 2 and this prose is bizarre. The thing about figurative language is, for example, in this section, trying to emphasize the feeling of tension and then trying to forcefully relax. I think this scene, I don't think that the image of a lute tightened and plucked really fits the tone of the scene. I understand where I was going here. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I don't think it fits the emotion of the overall scene. So that's why it really sticks out to me as like kind of not great in terms of, you know, figurative language. Okay, here I'm just gonna say she exhaled and turned away from him. Her next words were terse and cold, hanging in the stagnant cell between them. I don't think it's stagnant. I think it was just on fire. In the smoldering. Taeyeon's stomach churned. I wish you had left me in silo, she said. Ooh, those are fighting words. I would paragraph break there. I would build up to this dialogue more, actually, because this is like a huge... So Silo is where she was in chapter 1 when she was in prison. Taeyeon was the one who sent orders to release her. So she's literally telling Taeyeon, like, the prison camp is worse than this. It's worse than having to be here talking to you. Like, my girl Kyra is going through it. Yeah, I would just be way more harsher with this language. It was a moment of rare home. She exhaled, turned away from him. There would never be trust between them anymore. She had lied to him in the past, and she would certainly do it again. But when she spoke her next words, terse and cold, they hung in the smoldering cell like frost, and Taeyeon knew. I don't like the word frost. I just put it there as a placeholder. Taeyeon knew it was a moment of rare whole truth. I wish you had left me in silo, she said. Okay, yeah. So there's more emotional buildup. Right, so the guards come. They're like, gosh, are you okay? And then here, Taeyeon kind of covers for her. Fine. Kyra has it under control. They listened and waited as Haka and the others slowly retreated back down the hall. If you refuse, said Taeyeon, lowering his voice again, I'll remind you there is no other world in which my father simply lets you walk. This is really colloquial. Lets you walk? Simply releases you. The voice of this book is so all over the place. The negotiations, the exchange for you, the reputation of the crown to ask something of the Federation so soon after war. It was more Wulon that was put on the line to bring Kyra over the sea. Oh, it was more than Wulon. This is the fictional currency. So it was more than money that was put on the line to bring Kyra over the sea. My father won't stand for a debt unpaid. The king of an entire empire, she muttered, and yet he fears one foreigner. Taeyeon said nothing to this. The fire dissipated, and she adjusted the torch onto its mount, then turned to him. I will go, she said, and he let out a breath. But, she added, we don't need to say quickly, why have you narrowed down the shield's destination only to the imperial capitals and the courts? Okay, yeah, so they talk about, like, that. So the end of this scene, he swung open the cell. So she's able to leave the holding cell because she agreed. She was coerced, but she agreed to do the thing that the Empire wants her to do, which is go on this tour. He swung open the cell door. They walked side by side down the dark corridor. It was cramped and narrow, the ceiling too low. He could feel the brush of their robes between them. Above ground again, the morning was indigo dark. I would say, our daylight. This is fine. I'm just playing around now. A moment later, the mages descended upon them, first checking to see that he was unscathed and then binding Kyra's wrist. As they locked it in place, Kyra shifted in discomfort. Taeyeon clenched his jaw, set his eyes forward, and led the way. That's a nice, like, emotion to end the chapter on. It's so minor, but I would just take out this part. It feels like, I don't know, I just prefer it. It's like a little more subtle, but I think it conveys the same thing. Yeah, okay, we did it. We did some very, very light line editing. I know this is not as like in depth as I would usually do for these kinds of videos, but I just thought it would be fun to kind of do this impromptu and informal way. I still hope it was interesting, helpful. Thank you guys for watching. I'm always surprised by the amount of people that enjoy specifically this project, because I truly have like erased my mind of this project, so it is kind of fun to revisit it and to know that the project hasn't necessarily gone to waste, because I can still kind of talk about it and pick it apart and we can all kind of learn from it, I guess. Again, I do a little bit of beta reading over on Ko-fi, so if you're interested in joining the monthly memberships, then you can sign up. Starting December of this year, I will only be doing prose beta reading for tier 3 Ko-fi members. And then for tier 2 Ko-fi members, I will just be doing query letter critiques. That's just like a heads up. Guidelines are going to change just so that I can like manage my schedule a little bit better. That's it. I hope all your writing projects are going well, and I'll see you guys in my next video.